The sky over Michigan that morning was a dull gray, like it had forgotten how to shine. The streets were wet from last night's rain, and the cold seemed to stick to Amanda's skin like shame. She stood at the kitchen window, holding a chipped mug of lukewarm coffee, watching the mail truck pass by her house for the third time without stopping. She wasn't expecting any letters, just like she never expected kindness anymore. Amanda had been married to Rob for 9 years. 9 long years filled with silence, side eyes, and slow-burning cruelty. She wasn't always this size, but after losing her job at the diner and going through 2 miscarriages, the weight had crept on. 180 pounds. That's what the scale said last time she checked, and that number had become her prison. Her body didn't just carry weight, it carried stories. Stories of pain, stories of rejection, stories no one cared to hear. Rob wasn't the man she'd married. Or maybe he was, and she just didn't see it back then. He used to call her his sweet girl from Michigan. Now he barely looked at her, except to frown. When they went out, which was rare, he'd walk ahead of her, as if being seen next to her was some sort of burden. He never raised his voice, but his silence screamed louder than any insult ever could. That Tuesday morning in February, Amanda had cooked breakfast like always. Bacon, eggs, toast. She placed the plate on the table and poured Rob's coffee. He came downstairs, tie already on, scrolling through his phone. He didn't say good morning, didn't even glance at her. "Eggs are too greasy again," he muttered, pushing the plate away. Amanda forced a soft smile. "I can make something else," Rob interrupted. "Don't bother. Honestly, Amanda, just look at yourself." She stood still. "I can't do this anymore," he added, cold and final. "You've let yourself go. I'm tired of pretending. I don't love you like this. I don't even recognize you." That was the moment. It didn't come with yelling or drama, just a quiet slice right through her chest. He packed a bag and left by lunchtime. Said he needed space, needed to find happiness. He didn't hug her goodbye. Didn't look back. Amanda sat at the table long after he left, staring at the untouched plate of food, her hands trembling. The neighbors would find out. They always do. And she knew what they'd say. That Rob had finally had enough. That she should have taken better care of herself. That love has limits. But they didn't know Amanda, not really. She cried that night. Cried so hard her body ached. But something inside her began to flicker. Not hope, not yet. Just the start of a spark. A whisper saying, "You are not done." The next morning she stood in front of the mirror and looked at herself. Not with disgust, but with a kind of painful honesty. Her eyes were swollen, her hair messy, her old hoodie stained, with coffee. But for the first time in a long time, she really saw herself. "I deserve more than this," she said softly. That was the first step. She didn't know exactly what would come next. But Amanda knew she had to change, not for Rob, not for the people who whispered behind curtains, but for herself, for her health, for her sanity, for the life she still had left. She wanted to rediscover her worth, to chase prosperity not just in money or appearance, but in values, in richness of spirit, in strength. She was tired of surviving. It was time to live, and she would. 1 pound at a time. The house felt different without Rob. Quieter, but not in a peaceful way. More like something had been cut out, and the space it left behind echoed with everything he never said. Amanda moved through the rooms like a ghost. The air felt heavier than before, thick with memories, but also strangely lighter, as if some toxic weight had been lifted. On the morning of February 3rd, Amanda stepped outside wearing her old hoodie and sweatpants. The sky was clear for once, pale blue. A breeze cold enough to bite, but fresh in a way that reminded her she was still alive. She walked down to the end of the street. Just walked. That was it. Not to lose weight. Not for some dramatic life plan. Just to feel something. The sidewalk cracked under her sneakers, and the air smelled like salt and gasoline. Michigan in winter didn't give much, but that small walk gave Amanda a sense of motion. And that was enough to keep going. That night, she made a choice. No crash diets, no fake promises, just one new rule. Do one thing every day that moves her forward. One thing, even if it's tiny. Day by day, she started to move. She stopped buying frozen dinners, started cooking again, even if it was just grilled chicken and some vegetables. She deleted the food delivery apps from her phone. And she did her best to sleep before midnight, instead of lying in bed scrolling through social media, comparing her life to women who looked like they'd never eaten a carb in their lives. Amanda didn't have money for a gym membership, but she found a second-hand treadmill on Craigslist for $50. It squeaked and shook like it might collapse any second, but it worked. She walked on it every morning for 15 minutes with a podcast playing through a crackling Bluetooth speaker. And every week she'd write down her weight. 177, 172, 168. No celebration, no confetti, just quiet victories. 3 months passed. By May, she was down over 30 pounds. Her clothes started hanging loose on her shoulders. Her face, once round and tired, had softened. Not just from weight loss, but from something else. A peace she hadn't felt in years. One afternoon at the grocery store, she ran into Mrs. Coleman from down the street, an older woman who always used to look past Amanda like she didn't exist. But this time, she paused. "Oh, Amanda, is that you?" She blinked, surprised. "You look, well," Amanda smiled politely. "I feel healthier." She didn't mention the weight. She didn't need to. At home, she kept a small notebook on her nightstand. Every night she'd write one sentence about what she was grateful for. Her legs that carried her, the food she had, the warmth of her home. That book became her ritual, a reminder of her values, of what mattered. Amanda also took an online job, customer service for a wellness company. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid. Slowly, she began saving. A little, money here and there. Her first goal, a new pair of sneakers. The old ones had holes in the soles, and her feet ached after every walk. The new shoes arrived on a Thursday, all white, clean, lightweight. She laced them up and walked an extra mile that day. Felt like a symbol, not just a pair of shoes, but a small piece of prosperity she earned herself. By July, Amanda had lost nearly 70 pounds, and not once had Rob called. Not once had he checked in. But that was okay. Because somewhere between pain and perseverance, Amanda realized, she didn't want the man who left. She wanted the woman who stayed. And she was still here. By the middle of September, the leaves in Michigan had started turning, and so had Amanda's life. Golden yellows and deep oranges painted the streets, and her morning walks turned into full routines. She'd started jogging, slowly at first, just 1 block. But it grew. With each step, she shed not only weight, but pain. Amanda was now down 100 pounds. The mirror didn't lie anymore. Her skin was tighter, her cheeks slimmer, her eyes brighter. She still had stretch marks and loose skin, reminders of the battles her body had fought. But she no longer saw a broken woman. She saw a survivor. One morning, she stepped on the scale, 140 pounds down since that horrible February day. And yet, her transformation wasn't just on the outside. Amanda had started reading again. Books about health, self-worth, building a life rooted in real values. Not the ones sold to women on magazine covers, but the kind you build with truth. with healing, with purpose. She changed her diet not because a book told her to, but because she respected her body now. She drank more water, less soda, her skin cleared up. She smiled more. She even laughed again, something she hadn't done freely in years. At the local farmers market, she met people who didn't know her as Rob's wife. They knew her as Amanda, just Amanda. That felt like prosperity, not measured in money or riches, but in how people treated her, how she treated herself. She also started posting anonymously online, sharing her journey, not with fancy filters or hashtags, but with real talk. Her followers grew slowly but steadily. Women from all over commented, thanking her for being honest, for showing that transformation wasn't just about pounds lost, but strength found. One comment read, "You reminded me I'm worth saving." Amanda cried when she read that one, not sad tears, healing ones. Back home, she renovated the small spare room, painted it pale green, put in a desk she found at a thrift store and turned it into her space, her sanctuary, a place where she could work, write, and rebuild in peace. Around that same time, a neighbor named Melanie invited her to a small community dinner. Amanda hesitated, but went. She wore a simple navy dress that fit her body like it was made for her. Her hair was pulled back, lip gloss on. When she entered the room, the conversation dipped. People noticed. Melanie greeted her with a warm hug. "You look incredible, Amanda." "Thank you," she said softly. "I feel healthy, for the first time in years." She spoke with folks, laughed over cornbread and sweet tea, and when she left, someone shouted, "Hope we see you at the next one." On the way home, Amanda sat in her car for a moment and whispered, "I'm still here." The next morning, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She let it ring. Then a voicemail. She pressed play. "Hey, Amanda, it's Rob." Silence. I'm back in town, just for a bit. I'd like to see you. Maybe talk. Call me back." She stared at the screen for a long time. The voice she used to crave now felt like static, like background noise she didn't need. She didn't call back. Instead, she tied her sneakers, grabbed her headphones, and headed out the door. The wind was crisp, the sun shining through the trees. As she jogged through her neighborhood, someone honked and waved. It was the mail truck. A new guy. She waved back. Amanda didn't need to chase revenge. She was building something richer, a life full of health, self-worth, and real prosperity. And the story was just getting started. It was the first Monday of October when Amanda saw him again. She was walking back from the small community center after a women's wellness workshop, something she had signed up for on a whim, but ended up loving. It had nothing to do with weight loss. It was about boundaries, self-respect, understanding your own worth, real values. As she reached her porch, she heard the mail truck pull up. She gave the driver a polite wave, expecting to see the younger guy from before. But it wasn't him. It was Rob, wearing the standard USPS blue, holding a bundle of envelopes, awkwardly adjusting his cap. She froze. For a second, her breath caught in her chest. Not because she missed him, not because she still loved him, but because seeing the man who once made her feel invisible, now standing there with nowhere to hide, stirred something deep. He blinked. "Amanda?" She nodded, calm. "Rob." He cleared his throat. "Wow, you look healthy," she said, cutting him off gently. He nodded. "Yeah, really healthy." There was a long pause. He handed her the mail with a slightly shaky hand. "I didn't know this was your route," she said. "I just started last week. Needed a job. The money's steady, you know." Amanda nodded once. "Steady is good," She didn't invite him in, didn't ask about his life, but he lingered. I heard from Melanie you'd lost, what, like 140 pounds? 140 exactly. He shook his head in disbelief. That's insane. It's not, she replied. It's work, commitment, real health, real prosperity. He looked down, shifting his feet. You always had more discipline than I gave you credit for. Amanda raised an eyebrow. No, Rob, you just never saw me, not really. He didn't argue, just stood there, silent, carrying the weight of his choices. She could have said so much more. Could have reminded him of every night he looked through her, every insult he never said aloud but let hang in the air. She could have told him about the nights she cried herself to sleep because she believed him. Believed she wasn't enough. But Amanda had something far more powerful than revenge. She had peace. So she smiled politely. Take care of yourself. And she closed the door. Inside, she leaned against the wood for a second, heart pounding, not with fear, but strength. That moment wasn't about Rob. It was about her, about proving to herself that she'd changed, that the woman who used to beg for love no longer needed his validation. Later that evening, Amanda journaled everything. She wrote about the way his eyes looked different now, tired, almost lost, like he knew he'd thrown away something priceless. And maybe he had. She didn't care. That week, she picked up extra shifts at her remote job. The company had noticed her performance and offered her a lead position, with better pay. More money meant she could finally fix the leak in the roof, and maybe even start planning that solo trip she'd dreamed of for years. Somewhere warm, somewhere free. By Friday, she bought herself a new coat. Long, black, elegant, something she wouldn't have dared wear a year ago. It fit her like armor, strong, graceful, clean. At the store, a cashier complimented her. That color looks powerful on you, Amanda smiled. That's how I feel. Michigan wind swept around her as she stepped outside, coat billowing slightly. The sun was low in the sky, casting everything in gold. Autumn in her hometown had never felt so alive. She was no longer surviving. She was living. And wealth wasn't about bank accounts or luxury. It was about walking down a street you used to avoid, holding your head high, knowing your worth. Amanda had built a new kind of richness, and no one could take it from her now. By the second week of October, Amanda's life no longer resembled the quiet sorrow it had once been wrapped in. Her days had rhythm now, a structure that gave her peace. She woke up early, made her bed, and opened the curtains to let the sunlight in, even when it was cloudy. Michigan light could be shy, but she welcomed whatever it gave. Her face had changed. Her body, of course, had transformed, 140 pounds gone. But it was the fire in her eyes that people noticed now. The calm confidence in her posture. She no longer moved like someone trying to disappear. Amanda had reclaimed her space in the world. At the local co-op, where she now volunteered twice a week, people called her by name. They valued her input, asked her advice. She'd help stack shelves, assist elderly neighbors with groceries, and sometimes lead a short workshop about healthy eating on a budget. Amanda had learned to stretch $1 without sacrificing health, something that felt like a superpower in a country where fast food was cheaper than vegetables. One afternoon, as she was finishing up restocking the organic tea shelf, she overheard two women talking in the next aisle. "You remember Rob and his wife, Amanda?" one said, a little too loudly. "The one he left?" the other whispered. "Yeah, poor thing." "Not so poor anymore," the first one chuckled. "Saw her last week. I swear I didn't even recognize her. She's like a different person." Amanda didn't hide. She stepped into the aisle, looked them both in the eye, and smiled. "Hi, I'm Amanda. Still the same person, just living a little louder now." The silence that followed was sweeter than any apology. That night, she cooked herself a warm, balanced dinner: roasted salmon, sweet potatoes, and a small salad. She lit a candle at the table, not because anyone was coming over, but because she was finally honoring herself. Health was no longer a punishment. It was prosperity, and it was hers. A few days later, she received a letter. It was from Rob. His handwriting, once familiar, felt strange now. The envelope had no return address. She hesitated before opening it. Inside was a single page. His words, scrawled and uneven, said he'd lost his job in Ohio, tried to make things work with someone else, but nothing had lasted. He said he regretted walking away, that he realized he'd thrown away something real. The last line read, "I see now what you were worth. I just didn't have the eyes to see it then." Amanda sat still for a while, letting the words settle. But no part of her wanted to go back. Instead, she opened her laptop and logged into her online coaching group. Over the months, she had been mentoring 5 women, all struggling with body image and emotional healing. It wasn't for money. It was about values, giving back, creating community, real wealth. She posted a short message to the group. Growth is a quiet kind of power. You don't need to prove anything to people who once refused to see your light. Just keep shining. That same night, she got a message from a publishing rep who had seen her blog. A blog she never advertised, just posted to from the heart. They asked if she'd be interested in writing a book about her journey. Nothing fancy. Just her voice, her truth, her story. Amanda read the email twice, hand over her mouth. Not because she was in shock, but because it all finally made sense. Everything she had suffered, every pound lost, every tear, every rejection, every dollar she had scraped together. It had shaped her into the woman she was now, strong, grounded, and full of purpose. She whispered to herself, This is real prosperity." And it was. Not in fame, not in money, but in the quiet richness of a life rebuilt from ashes. That night she began to write her first chapter. Not for Rob, not for revenge, but for every woman who ever believed she wasn't enough. The air in Michigan was turning sharp with the breath of late autumn. Leaves crunched beneath Amanda's boots as she walked through the small park by Main Street. Scarf wrapped around her neck, hands deep in her coat pockets. Everything around her had changed, not just the season, but the way she moved through the world. There was power in her walk now, a kind of silent grace. She wasn't chasing approval anymore. She was building something richer. At the start of November, Amanda's blog post titled, "What I Gained by Losing 140 Pounds" went viral. It wasn't the numbers that drew people in. It was her voice. Honest, raw, no filters. She wrote about the way the world treated her when she was heavy, about how health wasn't just about smaller jeans, but freedom, mental peace, joy, and choosing herself after years of choosing everyone else. Within 72 hours, her email inbox exploded. One message stood out. A producer from a local morning talk show wanted to feature her, said her story was exactly what people need to hear right now. Amanda sat with the email for 2 days. She wasn't looking for fame. But she also knew there was value, real value, in visibility. If one woman saw her story and decided not to give up on herself, it would be worth it. She replied, yes. On November 10th, Amanda sat in a television studio in downtown Grand Rapids, lights overhead. Mic clipped to her blouse. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice, steady, soft, and strong, filled the room. The host leaned in. "Amanda, you lost 140 pounds. That's incredible. But what was the hardest part?" She smiled. Honestly? Believing I was still worth something before the weight came off, because the world doesn't always see that. But real prosperity starts when you stop waiting for outside approval and start honoring your own values. The host nodded, visibly moved. And what would you say to someone watching right now who feels stuck? Amanda paused. I'd say, it's not about the pounds. It's about reclaiming your story. Start with one step, just one. That's how everything changes. When the show aired, Amanda received over 2,000 messages. Women, men, teenagers, even seniors, all pouring out stories of pain, self-doubt, and quiet hope. She responded to as many as she could. One night, sitting at her desk with a cup of chamomile tea, she received a message that made her stop breathing for a second. It was from Rob. Just 2 sentences. I saw you on TV. I'm proud of you. I mean that. Amanda stared at the screen, not out of longing, but reflection. He was the one who left her when she was drowning. And now he was watching her rise from the shore, realizing what he had abandoned. That was poetic in its own way. But Amanda didn't need his praise. Her life was fuller now than it had ever been with him. She had built wealth, not just in money, though her new wellness coaching side gig was growing fast, but in self-trust, in connection, in inner peace. She closed the message without replying. Later that week, she held her first local support group session. 10 women showed up, bundled in coats, nervous but hopeful. They sat in a circle in the basement of a small library downtown. Amanda opened the session with a question. What would your life look like if you stopped shrinking yourself to make others comfortable? Silence, then tears, then stories. That night, Amanda didn't just feel like a survivor. She felt like a leader. And when she walked back to her car, she looked up at the sky, wide and open above Michigan, and whispered, "This is what healing looks like. No more shame, no more silence, only truth, only life, only forward." By mid-November, the chill in Michigan crept into everything. The pavement, the trees, the breath of the early morning. Amanda stood in front of her hallway mirror, adjusting a soft beige sweater over dark jeans. Her body felt like it belonged to her now. It no longer hurt to move. Her knees didn't ache. Her back didn't scream after a long day. She looked in the mirror and saw health. Not just in her reflection, in her eyes, in her posture, in her entire presence. That Saturday, she had been invited to speak at a wellness summit in Lansing, not as a guest, but as a headliner. The flyer said, Amanda Hayes, from surviving to thriving. Just seeing her name printed like that was enough to stir something deep in her chest. As she stepped onto the stage, facing a room of over 100 women, she remembered who she used to be. A woman who couldn't stand for more than 10 minutes without discomfort. A woman who avoided mirrors. A woman who used to cry quietly during commercial breaks, while her husband sat beside her in silence. She cleared her throat, leaned into the mic, and smiled. My name is Amanda. I was once 180 pounds heavier. But more than that, I carried years of emotional weight I didn't know how to put down. The room was silent. I believed my value was tied to what others saw, to what they said, or didn't say. I believed I wasn't worthy of love, of health, of peace. She paused. But I was wrong. And if you're sitting here thinking you're too far gone, too damaged, too tired, I'm here to tell you, you are still worthy. You always were. Applause broke out, slow, then steady, then rising. Amanda stood still and breathed it in, not as validation, but as confirmation, that what she lived through meant something now, that her pain had become purpose. After the event, women lined up to speak with her. Many cried. One handed her a folded note that simply said, "Thank you for surviving." That night, Amanda drove back to her small home in Michigan, hands wrapped around a travel mug of hot tea. The roads were quiet. Her heart was full. And as if the universe couldn't resist a perfect twist, there he was, Rob, standing at her front steps, holding a small cardboard box. He looked thinner, but not in a healthy way. His posture was different, shoulders sunken, eyes shadowed. Life had clearly knocked him around. She parked, got out slowly, clutching her coat closed. He turned. "Hey." Amanda nodded. "What are you doing here?" I found this. Some of your stuff from the old apartment. Thought I'd drop it off." She looked at the box. A few old books, a sweater, a photo album she forgot even existed. "I figured you wouldn't want to talk," he said, stepping back. "But I just needed to say something." Amanda stayed quiet. "I was wrong," he said. "About you, about everything." She tilted her head slightly, calm. "You left when I needed you most, Rob, and that taught me the most important lesson of my life, that I don't need someone who only loves me when it's easy." He nodded, swallowing hard. "I thought money and looks and control meant success, but you found real prosperity. You've got this light now, this wealth I never even knew existed." Amanda didn't speak. She didn't need to. He stepped down, shame heavy on his face. "Take care, Amanda. I mean that." As he walked away, she watched him go, not with bitterness, but with peace. He wasn't her ending. He was just the start of her rebirth. Inside, she placed the box on the counter, opened the album, and smiled at the old photos. A younger Amanda stared back, heavier, unsure, eyes dim. She whispered, "Thank you for surviving too," and closed the book. Now, her life wasn't just about weight loss. It was about legacy, about values that ran deeper than image, about showing others that healing is possible, even after years of silence. She grabbed her laptop, opened her manuscript, and wrote the next chapter of her book. Her story was no longer just hers. It belonged to every woman who had ever been overlooked, dismissed, or humiliated. And it wasn't over yet. Snow had begun to fall again over Michigan, soft, silent, and steady, just like Amanda's healing. The house smelled like cinnamon and pine. A small wreath hung on her front door, and inside, warm light glowed against old wooden floors she had refinished with her own hands. It wasn't a mansion. It wasn't flashy, but it was hers, paid for with her own money. Every single dollar earned with purpose, with dignity, with sweat. On the kitchen table sat the first printed copy of her book. "Still Here, What I Gained by Losing 140 Pounds. It wasn't on a bestseller list. It didn't need to be. It had already reached thousands of hearts, in shelters, clinics, libraries, and living rooms across the country. Amanda had partnered with a nonprofit to distribute free copies to women in recovery programs and single mothers trying to rebuild. That was the real richness she wanted to sow into the world. That was her definition of wealth. As she poured a mug of peppermint tea, her phone buzzed. A message from a young woman named Chelsea. "Amanda, your story saved me. I'm 43 pounds down and finally feel like I can breathe again. Thank you for showing me that healing is possible. I believe in my worth now." Amanda's eyes watered, not with sadness, but with pride. This was prosperity, creating ripple effects without even touching the water. She walked out onto her porch, wrapped in a soft coat, watching the mail truck pull around the corner. It wasn't Rob anymore. He had transferred out of state a few months back. Word was he'd taken a second job just to cover rent. Amanda didn't feel anger or revenge. She felt compassion and peace. The new mail carrier, a woman named Tanya, waved with a big grin. "Morning, Amanda. You've got a bunch of fan mail again," Amanda chuckled. Thanks, Tanya. Stay warm out there. She carried the bundle inside. Letters from women all over the country. Some had clipped old photos of themselves to the page. Others sent poems. A few shared stories too raw to ever post online. Amanda read every single one. And then she wrote them back. Not with polished quotes, but with real words, like, I see you, and you are not alone, and start where you are. That's more than enough. That evening, she hosted her third free community dinner. Simple food. Warm soup, roasted vegetables, and slices of fresh bread. She stood at the front of the room, welcoming old and new faces. Tonight isn't about dieting, she said. It's about values, about holding space for each other, about choosing health not because someone said you had to change, but because you're worth the care. The women clapped softly. Some cried, some just nodded deeply. Amanda smiled. After the meal, as she cleaned up the trays, Melanie, the same neighbor who once watched Amanda with quiet pity, came over. You've changed this neighborhood, she said. We see each other more now. We talk. We show up. Amanda wiped her hands on a towel and looked around the room. I think we all just needed permission to be seen. Later that night, as the wind curled around her windows, Amanda sat down at her desk. A new notebook open, a new chapter beginning. She wasn't writing about pain anymore. She was writing about joy. Real joy. The kind that comes when you take back your name. When you build a life brick by brick, pound by pound, day by day. The kind that isn't measured in dress sizes or bank accounts, but in the way you sleep at night knowing you are enough. Amanda didn't just get her revenge, she got her peace. She got her life. And as the snow fell outside and another letter slid through the mail slot, she whispered, Thank you for leaving, Rob. Because that door closing was the reason everything else could open. And you, listening right now, have you ever been through something like this? Leave a comment down below. I want to hear your story. I want